All right, so I'm going to look at patents real quick, and we'll just go through alphabetically. And again, just making sure you guys are prepared and ready to go. A couple things right off the bat that you'll want to do is name absolutely everything in your Maya scene file. When we start rigging, it's going to be imperative that everything's named. That way, when we start skinning things and working your outliner, that we know exactly what we're working with. So if we do come across any of these generically named geometries, we'll want to name them, and it doesn't matter what it is, everything needs to be named. And then I would recommend sticking with a naming convention. So I've noticed some of these, well, some of them are called mesh, feet meh. We'll want to go in, and I would recommend being specific. So mesh is fine. Personally, I prefer geo. The reason why is when we start setting up different bones, constraints, and groups and things like that, we'll have multiple things that might share the same name because we're identifying it, let's say, as your feet. And so if I have feet geometry, feet controller, feet curve, or feet whatever, I want to be specific here. So at the end, I would give it, at least for your geometry, I'd recommend either using mesh or geometry, but something to identify the fact that it is geometry. All of your meshes should be separate if they're actual separate geometries, if they're not connected by faces. So it looks like when I select the feet here, these should be separate. So I'd go under mesh and separate these, and then treat them as individuals and name them accordingly. So if you have a left and a right version, let's go to edit and delete by type history. Name it as such. Not sure why it deletes the shader when I do that, but um, so I would call this maybe boot L geo, or I guess in his case mesh, and then boot R mesh. But be very specific about these, and then let's see what else. Don't have anything grouped together, so it looks like the outliner, just in terms of the geometry, looks nice and clean. So you don't want any of your geometry grouped. We will group it eventually once we get to the skinning process, or the actually finalizing the rig. But just make sure your outliner's cleaned. Everything is just sort of a single node or single mesh option here. We don't have everything grouped together. Your image plane, so if you brought in images, if you're completely done modeling, just clean that out of your outliner over here, so that we have all of your geometry here and named. One thing I like to do right off the bat, so if I've finished a character model, I like to use the cleanup tool to help me find any issues with the geometry. So if we're looking for geometries with less than 4 sides or more than 4 sides, there's a tool we can use that'll help us find that. So I'm going to marquee drag and select all the geometry, and then up here under mesh, I'll go to cleanup and click on the options box. At the top here, there's an operation, so we can either tell it to just automatically fix the polygons. I wouldn't recommend this because you can't always predict how Maya will solve polygon issues, but what I would recommend doing instead is using this select function, and what it'll do is it will select the faces based on your criteria, and then you can go in and fix any issues. So down below we can specify that criteria. The one I like to start with here is faces with more than 4 sides, so it's going to find anything that's an n-gon. So I'll click that and hit apply, and if well, let me just do his body for an example. So if I select the body here and hit apply, if it just deselects the geometry, that means there's nothing wrong. But when I selected all the geometry and hit this, it looks like it's highlighting components on the head and the arms. And then what we would want to do is isolate or find where that information is happening. I'm going to shift select the head and both arms and isolate them, since I know there are issues there. Now we could look around and try to find the highlighted faces. Something else I might do is just pull them forward like so, or maybe push them down just so I can see where they're at. And then once I find out where that geometry is at, I'll undo that move and then look in the areas. So there's a face right there in the palm, and we would want to figure out how to turn that into a quad. So that needs fixed. Let me do this one more time. Yeah, it looked like there was quite a bit in the face. And so it looks like just a couple n-gons there under the nose. In the back of the mouth, there's 2. And where else? And in the eyes. So again, we'll want to go through and run this function on your geometry and see if you have n-gons, and then look into cleaning them up. Now, in terms of finding tries, it's a little different. Let me unisolate that. I'll grab all the geometry, and this time, instead of doing faces with more than 4 sides, I will do 4 sides, which isn't what I really want. But what we can do is hit apply. It's going to select every 4-sided polygon, and then what we can do is, under the select menu, go to inverse, and it will select anything that isn't a quad, and then I can isolate those faces. And so there's a bunch of tries there, but that looks like it's probably part of an eye or something. Yeah. So that's the pole's on your eye. So if you have like spheres or something like that, that's fine. And tries, usually aren't the end of the world. But if you did really want to be thorough and find your tries and then clean them up, this would be my recommendation. Let's see. And so the next thing I'm going to look at here is just typical edge flow to make sure everything looks okay. So for the body, that looks fine. Arms, I would separate them so they're not one whole geometry. So I should be able to select the arms individually. So I would separate those. Let's see, the face. Other than the n-gon, looks okay. I think with this particular model, I guess it really depends on what you're after. I would almost recommend separating the hair and having that as a separate mesh. It's not the end of the world. This would be more of an approach if we were going for optimized low poly, especially for like game engine or something like that. But otherwise, I would recommend maybe just doing the hair separate. But in terms of the topology, it looks good. Yeah, legs look good. So I think everything else on this model looks good. I would just clean up the n-gons and then separate all the meshes there and then name everything in the outliner. Something else I would recommend doing, if you have a lot of unused texture nodes, it looks like this scene's actually okay, but what you could do is go to edit here in the hypershade and delete unused nodes. So if you did create a bunch of shaders that you're not using, just come in here and delete those to clean that up. Something else you'll want to do is delete your history. So when I select this head, for example, and if we look over here on the input section of the channel box for this mesh, there's a ton of history there. So just to be clean, you'll want to select everything, and I would go to edit, delete all by type history, and it's going to clean up this information. And that's something you should be doing periodically anyhow. It will make your scenes a lot cleaner and less susceptible to crashing if you are deleting your history frequently. And then something else I would recommend doing is going to modify, and under here centering the pivots for all of your geometry, and then deleting or freezing the transformations. And so when I select the geometries over here in the channel box, it should read all zeros for the translate and rotates, and then ones for the scales. So that's kind of how I'll be going through these. I'll probably go through the rest of these a little quicker without necessarily explaining all that. But yeah. So Peyton's looks good, except for some n-gons. Ariel. Alright, so right off the bat, let's go in here and clean up. Select matching polygons. Let's do more than 4 sides. So it looks like some n-gons there in the face and the feet. So you'll want to figure out how to eliminate those. Some of this might just be running edge loops across, like these I think should be fairly easy to fix. Well, should have mirrored over, but it didn't. Yeah, I think some of these in the head you can run across, and I think that'll do the trick. This one I would probably just run into the edge of the eye socket there, like so. So yeah, you want to go in and clean that up. I think the edge looping, I mean, other than some of these N-gons that run through here, I think it looks okay. One thing you might consider, so the edge looping in the, like in an animal's face, even though the topology is significantly different than a human, I would still run it pretty similar. And so I think one area here would be maybe the mouth. Oh, come on. Well, that's unfortunate. Might have to do this by hand. It might not be pretty. Or by mouse, I guess I should say. So I'd recommend having these edge loops run around and kind of conform to the contour of the lip there, and actually form sort of this edge loop that goes around here and then to the front of the lip. And then you'll continue to, you can keep these edge loops that come from here, but here they kind of come to a corner. Well, yeah. Yeah, I would see if you can get these to run around in sort of a looping circle. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too hard to get that in. Yeah, and so having something like that would help. I'm kind of getting a little confused there. What's attached and what isn't. Let's see what else. So yeah, N-gons there. You want to extrude these eyelids to make a socket, and so I'd grab that whole edge loop, just extrude it and push it back in. That I would wait to do though until you've figured out these edge loops. Again, I think it'd be okay to run those just into the eyelid. Oof. Yeah, we'll just push it back, that's fine. And down. It might be easier to isolate this. And then once you've created sort of that thickness of the eyelid, I'd grab that edge loop there and then we'll extrude it one more time. And this one I will push all the way back. And so I'll make the general shape of the eye socket first. And it's not going to have much shape to it. So I'll take that back like so. And then I'll extrude that edge one more time and bring it in, and then I'm going to grab these vertices here along that edge loop and merge them to center. So under edit mesh, we'll hit merge to center. Oof. What's going on there? Something weird going on with the symmetry. Let me just turn that off. Merge to center. Oh. Have you had any issues with the symmetry in this at all? Little. Um, so I'll do that, and now we have this kind of socket that goes straight back, and I'd like it to be a little round or more round. So now we can come with the multi-cut tool, and I'll hold shift, and we'll put in an edge loop, or shift and control, and we'll put an edge loop right there in the center of it. And then we can grab this edge loop, and I can scale it to help round that socket out a little bit. You can add as many edge loops in there as needed, but I'd start with one there in the center and then start shaping that up a little bit. But yeah, you'll want to socket there on the inside. Body looks fine. Legs look okay. Yeah, those look good. To save yourself some work, I'd recommend when you do your feet, I would recommend, and this is for anyone if you model toes really, I would recommend setting up your feet the way I do. So you'll only have essentially one joint, and it's going to bend like all the rigs we've been using up to this point, like Max and things like that. I wouldn't articulate the toes. You could, but the way you would rig those is pretty similar to how we do the hands, but it's a lot of it's very time consuming. So I'd recommend, yeah, just treating it like I do mine to save yourself some time. Yeah, you just won't be able to articulate them. It looks like the vertices aren't merged here. Let's see. Oh. Well, they're merged. There's just a sharp edge there. Let me see if Mesh Display fixes this. We'll do a soften edge. Okay, yeah, you might soften your normals there to eliminate that sort of hard edge, but yeah, everything else looks okay. I think the face still needs some work. There's a lot of N-gons up there, and then yeah, getting that edge loop that kind of goes all the way around the mouth would be helpful. Yeah, like I said, even though it's an animal, I would get on here, and you'll still kind of adhere to these guidelines. You'll just kind of adapt them to an animal face. So yeah, you have those edge loops that go all the way around from the top of the lip, around the corner, and then under the chin. So you'll need that in there. But otherwise, it looks good. Yeah, if you're having problems with the symmetry, which it was not working for me, it didn't seem, I would just delete half your character. That's probably why. Let me see. Let me undo that again. Yes. So your character is not center. If you notice here, the center of your character is just slightly to the right of the center axis. So there's a couple ways you can fix that. I guess it depends on what you're wanting to do. Now, if this makes your character a little too... you could just take all these verts here and select them and then push them over, but I don't know if it's going to create sort of this elongated section. If you don't want to do that, I saved that, whoops. What we could do is take this and hold X and then snap that to the center grid, and then I'd still want to take these just in case they're not perfectly lined up, and just to show you sort of an extreme difference here. Let's pretend some of these are really wonky. I'm going to grab all these verts here and then double click on the move tool over here. I'm going to reset the tool, and so when I hold X and move these around, so X snaps to grid, you'll notice they all maintain sort of their same spatial distance from one another. So those two that I pulled out still maintain a similar distance from all the other selected areas. If I go to the move snap settings, and here it says retain component spacing, if I turn that off and then hold X for grid snapping, it forces them all to align to the same axis that we're snapping in, and then I can put those on that center grid there. And then those will for sure all be in a straight line. And then for the pivot point, I want to make absolutely certain that it's on the center grid there. So I'm going to hold D to move the pivot, and then I'm going to hold X to grid snap, and then snap that right there. And then we'll go up here and edit, duplicate special, click on the options box. We'll do a copy, -1 for scale X, hit apply, and then we can combine this. So go to mesh, combine. Anytime you combine, immediately just go up to edit, delete by type history, and that will delete any unused nodes. So it will probably avoid things like this if you didn't intentionally create all these. And then we could grab all those verts in the center and then remerge this. And we'll go to merge under the edit mesh. And then for the threshold, I'm going to set it to 0.0001 and then hit merge. And then what that will do is any vertice, if there are two vertices sitting directly on top of each other, it will merge them into a single vertice. And then your symmetry should work on this. And this goes for anyone, so I'm not just picking on you, but hopefully that's helpful to anyone if your character's off center. And then let's see. Tail's good, fur's good. I like these little tufts of fur you got here. Yeah, I think everything on this will be good. I think really it's the face. There's just a lot of ingons, and then we need eye sockets. And then you'd be in good shape. I would get rid of all these nodes here, so I would immediately just go to edit, delete all by type history. If that doesn't get rid of those, and it looks like it actually got rid of a lot of them, what you could do is with all of your geometry visible, marquee drag and select it, and then on your keyboard hit Shift P, which will unparent it if it's parented to anything, and then you can go in and just delete all the empty nodes that we're not using. If you want to like really double check, you could expand these to see if there's anything in it. If not, just get rid of them. Yeah, usually that's a result of combining and doing things and then not deleting the history. And then delete anything you don't need. So if this is all hidden for a specific reason, or you're not going to use it, just get rid of it. Anything you're not going to use for the rig. So, other than that, yeah, I think it looks good. I really pick up the speed on these. Ashley. Alright, so looks like there are some ingons, so you'll want to clean those up. Okay, it looks like you're retopoing, is that correct?
Yeah, I was too. I think I'm gonna redo the edge was also like on the side there. I did. Zoe at home was showing me a
Oh,
better way to do something because I was having a lot of trouble.
okay. So yeah, I'd clean up those ingons, but in terms of the clothing, let's see, I think it looks good. You might consider putting in one more edge loop here. So general rule of thumb is you'll want sort of an even spacing between your faces. So you've got this kind of square shape down here established. I would try to maybe they don't all have to be uniform or perfect, but I would recommend maybe just having one more here in sort of the thigh, and then one more here in the pelvic region. I guess I could. So I would use the multi-cut and just hold Control Shift and put one right in the center here, and then here. And that'll just help for better deformation. For the feet, I would do one more here, or two more here. You could just select this edge loop and use a bevel. And then I would give it one more segment here for a total of 3. And then you can use the fraction to offset that. But I think at least those 3 will help you get a good ball roll. And I would just imagine whatever that center edge loop is, that's going to be sort of the point at which it goes up on the ball. So I would, you could shift those up or down wherever you want that ball in your foot to be. But I would do at least 2 more edge loops there. Other than that, the body looks good. Coat looks good. Same thing here. I would maybe do at least one more edge loop here in the center of the arm. And then possibly one more right here, just to get a little bit more of an even spacing on those faces. But other than that, the coat looks good. Let's see, your wrist, hand. This one, I think I would do just one more here, one or one or two. You don't need too much more there. And then yeah, we got to fix the ingons in that hand. Um, with the face, I think you've done a really good job in just in terms of keeping your poly count to a minimum here with the rest of the model. I think for the face, that's probably too much. So if you're going to retopo that again, I'd have a lot less faces, and it would be a good idea to. How did you do this? Did you retopo on top of this one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was attempting to retombo, but I didn't realize like this is too much, and also just there was having a bunch of trouble with like ending up getting triangles and stuff because it's actually symmetry.
yeah. So using big broad tries like or tries quads like this will help the process go a lot faster. And then it doesn't have to be perfect when you draw it in because then we can come in and quickly push this stuff around. It gets a little more difficult when you have a dense amount of information like this. And if we needed it, we could always come back and add it later, additional geometry. And ideally, you would have symmetry turned on. It looks so bad. But it's pretty quick just to push this stuff around if we have less geometry. And then, yeah, if you needed those extra edge loops, once you get the major edge looping blocked out, like rings around the eyes, that mask shape, and so forth, then you can come in and if I hold control, we can add more geometry if we really need it. And it just becomes a lot quicker to do this way. Um, but yeah, so I would have less geometry. And yeah, you want to do the mouth. Just have an opening, and then once you've got the mouth in place, then you can extrude the mouth sac back. I think the body and everything looks great. Yeah, I think it's just the ingons on the hand, and then yeah, getting the face figured out. And then I didn't say it, but anything else I mentioned, going forth for everybody's, you'll want to do all sort of the cleanup things I was doing with Peyton's in terms of naming everything, deleting history, and all that. I'm not going to say that every time. Let's see, Sarah. Version 11. Ooh. All right, let's go mesh cleanup. A bunch of ingons, so we want to clean those up wherever they might be. So a few in the shoe there, some in the belt and jacket, and the face shirt. Yeah, so a few ingons. You want to fix those up. In terms of edge looping, everything looks fantastic. I think once you get those ingons fixed, this will rig or skin pretty well. Face looks good. Same thing I did with aerials in terms of your eye sockets. I would. It doesn't technically matter, I guess, as long as we never have a chance to see it. I don't know what the eyeball rotations look like, but I would recommend extruding an edge here and then merging the vertices to the center just so you can have a closed eye socket. But it wouldn't be the end of the world if you left those open. Separate everything. So under mesh, separate, and then we'll go edit, delete all by type history. Oh, are these modeled as one geometry? Oh, okay, that's perfectly fine. Wait. Yeah, okay, no, it's fine. No, this looks good. I think really the biggest thing with this is going to be the n-gons. So I just get in and clean those up. Um, Clean up your outliner, name everything, put geo or mesh or something at the end of all these, and then just delete anything else you're not using, including the image planes. But overall, it looks great. Which one should I be looking at, Beck? This one? Okay. Alright, so yeah, we got some n-gons to clean up. So you want to go through and fix those wherever they might be. Back of the leg there. That one shouldn't be too hard to clean up. We could grab this diamond shape and then hold control and hit delete. That should take care of that. But edge loops look fine. Yeah, so I would just name everything, clean up the outliner. It's still separate, so using that same method I did on aerials, you'll want to combine the two sides. Mouth looks good. Eye sockets look good. I think this one's good. Just clean up those n-gons and then combine the meshes. I think for edge looping, I would maybe have just one more here. And then ideally you would have one that kind of goes into a circle here. Now, there's some weird stuff going on in there that we'd want to fix, but I'd have one that goes all the way around, like this. And then let's target weld. Oof. Actually, we could probably get rid of this try and then run that down. Yeah, and I'd suggest cleaning this stuff up here. This is just going to make for better deformation in the neck. So I'd have something like that. Obviously, you want to clean this up a little bit because we don't want those kind of hard angles. But you get kind of the idea. But yeah, I'd recommend cleaning that up a little bit. Other than the n-gons and I think that neck area, I think this will be okay. So it looks good. For the feet, Madison, I would recommend having these come forward. like this, or face forward. Just because of the rigging process, it's going to be difficult to rig this. The feet probably won't work if we try to rig them pointing outwards. This is more of a stylized pose that we would do once it was rigged. So I'd have the feet going forward. Same thing I mentioned on some of these others. I would look at maybe breaking up these faces just a little bit more. You could use the connect tool over here. So if we grab the connect tool and come in where it says segments and maybe key in, I'm just going to guess 4 at first. And then if we grab one of these vertical edges, oh, it didn't take my number here. There we go. Yeah, I think 4 would be good. And then we can hit enter and it'll evenly distribute those edge loops. And then we can just do this with the bottom part of the leg as well. So I'd break that up. For feet, I always recommend having 3 edge loops that go around. Right now it has this diagonal like this. And instead of doing that diagonal, because that's going to make it really difficult to, we probably won't be able to bend that on sort of a ball roll or a ball raise. And what I would recommend is, with your edge loops, try to run them around like this. And then you'd still have the ones that run up your leg like that. But yeah, I'd have those edge loops actually wrapping around the foot. This looks good. I would have more geometry in the shoulder areas. There's some of these we could probably run across like this. You could run these across the chest. I'd have an opening for your shirt, so we could probably grab these faces here and extrude. With an offset, and then we can delete these, and I'd be careful with this, but I'm not going to spend a bunch of time cleaning this up, but you get kind of the idea. I would create sort of an opening to the shirt. Like I said, be careful there. And then what we would want is maybe at least, let's do this, and then I would take these and run them down. And why aren't those going all the way? Oh. So it looks like there was a vertice floating there. There we go. So I'd run one more edge loop, maybe going down the chest, and then we could do this. For the arms, I wouldn't have these so big here. It is good to have these sort of loops of faces going around the arm just so you'll get good deformations. I think it's good that those are there, but I wouldn't have that going so far into the chest. And then this one we could probably just run into the sleeve area here. Isolate this. I guess for the sleeve, same thing we did here for the top. We might actually take these faces, delete them, and then make this shape a little more circular. Like so. Come on. And I'm not doing this symmetrically, but yeah, you'll want to do this symmetrically. And match it to your arm. So I could have done that a little better, but yeah, I do that, and then you might do one more edge loop here, and then possibly, let's see, looks like we'll need to tidy that up into here. and possibly one more there. And then we'll slide this over. Just to even out the spacing a little bit. Yeah, because you don't want all those vertices real tight together. It'll make the deformation once we get this skinned. It'll work a little better. I would maybe consider taking this one and running a bevel on it, and maybe add one segment there so we can get some good twisting motion in that area. Arms look good. I would maybe again do the same thing we did to the legs down here to the arms, and then the palms should be facing flat to the ground. Let's turn that off. So you wouldn't want to twist your arm like this up here, but these do need to be facing the ground. Again, just for rigging purposes, we generally would not rig a hand that's facing forward like this. I'd have an edge loop that goes around the mouth like this. And then we could target weld these. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's get rid of these tries here by running those edge loops into the mouth, like so. But yeah, you'll need at least that for the facial animation. And then I would extrude this back for a mouth sack. Extrude that one more time. We'll pull it. Oof. Might need to isolate this. Out, and we'll push that back a little bit. And then yeah, we'll have to be careful down here as we extrude this mouth sack out. So I might have to take this and push it up. There we go. And then same thing, I handle the mouth sack pretty similar to the eye sockets. I'll make a really ugly shape at first. So I'll just take that straight back to block out the major shape of the mouth sack. If you, with that edge still selected, if you scale it all in one direction, it will force it into sort of a flat line where all those vertices line up. And then we can extrude that one more time. And then I'm going to grab this loop of vertices. Now it's up to you. The mouth sack you could leave open if you want. We can maybe just push that down a little bit for sort of the esophagus area and then taper this off. And then if you want to round out the mouth sack, this is when I would start coming in and snapping in an edge loop. And then grabbing it and then scaling it out to round that out. But I would have a mouth sack in there. Same thing with the eye sockets. And then kind of similar to what we did with the mouth here. Run, you're going to need that circular edge loop that goes around the eye sockets. And then again, going back to the reference, we'll need that sort of mass shape as well around the brow and under the eye. Everything else looks good. Nose being separate, it's completely fine and won't hurt anything. Yeah, everything else should be good. And I have been tracking tries, so you just always do this, or ingons rather, not tries. But yeah, it looks like there's a lot of ingons on this one too, so just be mindful of that. Madison, let's see, Mikey. So ingons, and it looks like the feet, and it looks like the neck. Um, this we probably won't need. If we never see it, there's probably no need for it. So I would delete that. Um, Same sort of comment I made on the heels or the feet on the other one is just having these edge loops that go all the way around through the center. Yours are they're closer, but we're getting these kind of diagonals back here. And let's do edge constraint. And so I'd try to have these running maybe with less of a angle, so we have a little more control over that. And yeah, I think once we get that kind of straightened out a little bit, then we could probably do one more edge loop in there. Oof. What? What? Well, that's bizarre. Oh, I see. That is weird. That one you might have to do by hand. Oh, I see. Yeah, I'd want at least one more in there, but it has this kind of like spiraling pattern in the edge flow there. Let's see. Oh, you're still working on the arms. What you have so far looks good on the arms. I would model an opening in this shirt, kind of similar to what we were looking at on the last one. Face looks good. Yeah, the face looks pretty good. Yeah, no, I think overall this looks good. I would maybe try to figure out the edge looping a little better there on the foot for the ball, but no, everything else looks good. And yeah, no, delete that extra geometry in there we don't need. But, and then fix any n-gons you might have. Nancy. So it looks like a few n-gons you'll want to fix there. I would maybe have one more here at the ankle so we can get a good ankle twist. And then I would try to run an edge loop that goes all the way around here. Let me see if I can do this quicker. No, that's just not going to be pretty if I do it that way. Yeah, I would run this all the way around. Hopefully a little cleaner than I'm doing, but and then yeah, try to get rid of that. We'll get rid of that try. We could probably just target weld like so, and that should be good. So that looks good. This looks good. So that 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 looks good. should be fine. Again, for the arms or the hands, I would have the palms facing down towards the ground instead of towards the camera. I would connect the head into the neck if you can. You could possibly get away with fewer edges in the cylinder you've used, and then yeah, you could line up these vertices maybe a little better with the cylinder, and then just combine everything. I like to use, so if you have an extra geometry down here, I like to use it as sort of like a snapping guideline. So when you're starting to line these verts up on the head, you can just hold V and then left click and drag from the center towards the vertices you're eventually going to merge these into, like so. And then that'll also let you know if you need more geometry to connect these things. But yeah, I would connect that, and then definitely for the neck here, you'll want more geometry. So I would, because we won't be able to get any kind of bend if we don't. So I'd come in here and do probably like 2 or 3. Let's actually use the connect tool to do this. So something like that. Face should be okay. Everything else looks good. So yeah, I think the big thing with this is the hands need to face down instead of towards the camera. And then, yeah, maybe one more edge loop there around the ankle, and then rounding that one around the top of the foot. Yeah, connect the neck and the head, and then add more edge loops there in the neck. But everything else looks good. And, of course, clean up the Ngons and the outliner here, name everything. It looks like everything's named, but I would be specific, and I know it seems ridiculous, but name everything if it's mesh or if you want to call it like mesh or geometry. Just tack that on at the end of all of your items there. Outliner looked really clean though. Let's see here. Madison. Yeah. Delete any geometry you're not using. So if you're not going to rig it, yeah, just get rid of it. So the body looks good. My only suggestion again would be to model the hands facing down instead of towards the camera. Again, this is going to be not ideal for rigging. I would try to attach, let's see, get rid of this. I would want the legs and arms attached to the body, and then same thing with this shape here. I would try to make that as part of the body as well. Actually, all of this really. The mouth, eyelids, all of this, you should be able to attach it into the body. So it's one piece. I guess it's a good thing these are separate though, because this might make it easier to, let's see, let's go to modify center pivot. And let's freeze the transformations. Make it easier to twist these down. And then look into connecting it into the body there. And then again, kind of similar with aerials here. Even though it's not a human, we still need we still need those edge loops that kind of go around the mouth area. Again, going back to that reference here, we're going to need this type of edge flow. You could probably combine these. Let's see. Actually, you could probably combine all of it. Although the leg area is going to be a problem because there's a gap there. So we may not be able to re-topo that. But everything else you might be able to do a mesh combine and then turn this into a live surface. And then using quad draw with symmetry here. I could maybe start using this to plan this out. And I don't think that symmetry is working. Oh, you know what? I haven't been checking this on anyone's. Always have, so if you go to panels, orthographic front view, your character should always face towards you. You never want to do it to the left or right or away from the camera. So if you're, please check that on yours. If I've looked at yours and I haven't checked that, just make your character face forward. I think everybody's was though. That's easy to fix though. So you could take, I guess I'll have to live draw this first. You could grab all your geometry, group it, and then rotate it 90 degrees. And then I will grab that group node and freeze its transformations. So we'll go to modify, freeze transformations. And then you'll grab all of your geometry again and then hit Shift P to pull it out of that group. And then your character should be facing forward. And then let's try this again. Modeling toolkit, quad draw. Yeah. Ugh. We'll ignore those. Oh. This may not be easy like I thought. The character's not center. So what you might have to do is, because it's not center, I would push this into an axis in which it's mostly center, and then we'll only retopo half of this, and then you'll mirror over the retopo when it's center. So let me turn object off. Yeah, it makes it a little bit of a challenge. Maya, please. There we go. But yeah, once you get it rotated to face forwards in positive Z, then we can come in. And like I said, we still want to adhere to the typical edge flow. But since symmetry is not working, I'm only going to do half of this without symmetry on. One thing I like to do is I might jump around here. And so we've got the mouth started, and then I might go into other areas that I know I need to retopo or think about. So like the nose, we would probably want to do something like this. And then once you get sort of these edge loops blocked out real quick, then it's a matter of, how do I tie this into everything else? So I would probably do maybe a couple there. And I would just keep working my way through this. But yeah, I would retopo this and then just have this reference up as you're doing it. But you should be able to pretty quickly block everything out after you combine the mesh here. For the arms, I would recommend in the armpit area, and again this goes for most models here, you'll want an edge loop that goes around the armpit. and then you might match this up to your arm a little better. And then I would do one around the arm itself. Maybe not so far away. Like that. And then you could just continue down the arm. We could maybe make broader shapes here first. So this will make your, should make this faster. So instead of doing a lot of these smaller ones in the arm first, so sometimes Maya's a turd, and you got to push these vertices closer together first, and then put them back. If Maya doesn't want to give you the quad you're after. There we go. Holding shift, we can maybe smooth this out a little bit. Maybe not just yet. But yeah, you can block out these quads really quickly by making these elongated sort of faces. And then we could come in while holding control and then pop in some edge loops and then hold shift, and then we can smooth that out. So hopefully that'll make your retopo process quicker. But yeah, I would look into ways you could attach the arms like this. I would maybe do the same thing with the legs, but you might just take this edge here before you combine it, and you could do the overlapping geometry like we have in the arms, but just make sure it looks like it's connected to the body, and then do a similar retopo process to what we did up here. But yeah, well, I think with your character you could probably get away with having it as one geometry. Let's see, Bailey. Alright, so check for N-gons. It looks like there's a few of them. Once you find them, yeah, we could get in and start cleaning them up. Let's see, it looks like there's some weird pulling. Anytime you see weird pulling like this when we're in smooth, usually it means vertices aren't connected, or there's something wrong with the faces or edges. Actually, it looks like there's a floating vertice right there. There we go. But yeah, clean up the N-gons. For this piece here, for the waist, I would have maybe 1 or 2 edge loops. Right around in there. Possibly 3, just so we get good twist and bend there. And then you might, just to make absolutely sure there's no issues here, in terms of, once we get it skinning, that this doesn't separate, maybe take this edge and push it in just a little further down, and take this one and push it a little further up, just so there's no room for error in terms of being able to see that gap. Other than the N-gons, the face looks great. I think that'll be good for rigging. Arms look great, fingers look great, other than these big N-gons here, so I'd look into cleaning that up. But everything else looks really good. Yeah, and then ungroup everything. So I'm just going to grab all the geometry and hit Shift P, and then delete all these group nodes if we're not going to use them. And then again, be consistent in your naming convention and name absolutely everything, even if it's this little knot. Like if it were a separate, I don't care what it is, just name everything, and then specify if it's mesh or geometry or whatever. Just be consistent across the board there. Yeah, no, it looks really good. It's got some ingons to clean up. Let's see, Chase. Possibly one more edge loop there in the boot. Oops, a doodle. Let's go to cleanup. Watch out for ingons. So you'll want to clean those up. But other than the ingons, everything looks great. Edge looping, all that, I think will be good for rigging. So yeah, clean up the ingons. You can leave your shaders. I just did that so I could see your wireframe better. But yeah, I think the shaders you had were fine. Again, I would maybe consider ungrouping everything and then making sure everything's named, which it looks like you probably did. Yeah. Yeah, you've got a really clean outliner. No, looks good. I would just, again, using the cleanup method, find the ingons and get rid of them. I think you should be in good shape. Yeah, you've got a good or appealing character design when you laugh every time you see it. I think I looked at this one already. I think everything was good on this. Well, everything looks good. Let's check your cleanup options here and see if we can find any ingons. So it looks like the only thing we need to fix are these ingons and the knuckles there. So yep, fix those ingons, but otherwise your model looks great. Let's see, Katie. Uh, so just ingons in the hands. So you'll want to fix those. Um, Everything looks fantastic. I think the only recommendation I would have, other than fixing those ingons, again, just like we've seen with a couple of these others, um, maybe adding probably 3 edge loops here on the thigh and lower leg. And then same thing here in the arm. Have maybe a few running here in sort of the bicep area and then the forearm. So yeah, just add those edge loops there, and then fix the ingons in the hand. This looks great. And Hannah. Final. Possibly one more edge loop in the foot here. Somewhere right around in here, wherever your ball would be. I'd grab this edge loop here and just push it up inside the leg, and then possibly grabbing this edge loop here on the pant and extrude it inwards like this, just to really hide that. We're shoving geometry in there. Same thing here. Grab that and we'll extrude it in and maybe push it up a little bit, like so. And then same thing here. Just to hide that seam, and it's okay if they're separate, but yeah, I would try to hide that seam. That looks good. That looks good. Ingons in the hands. We'll do the cleanup here in a second to check that. Oh, did you? Yeah. Facial edge loops look great. Again, you might consider creating eye sockets, so just extrude that back and round it out. But no, this looks fantastic. Let's see. Let's grab that. And so you said you fixed that. Yeah. So I'd look into fixing that too. And it looks like you've got a pretty, in terms of the spacing here, these faces are pretty wide. You could probably just run that back and you'd be fine. But no, this looks great. So no, I think this would be good other than those few suggestions. So I think that's everybody. So again, I'll upload this. That way you'll have it so you can make any of these suggested changes, and then your final character model will be due Wednesday when we get back from fall break. And then something else, so I think with chases, this is probably a good example. I do not require that you UV or texture these things at all. Chase, where are you? There you are. But you could still apply flat shaders. I think with chases here, it's a really good example because it's breaking up a lot of the color information. So if you just select the geometry and apply shaders, and in the shaders just use the color slider, you could do that just to make it a little more interesting than a flat gray character model. So I'd recommend doing that. And then you can even you can apply. I'm sure you guys know this, but you can apply shaders to specific faces. So if you, let's say we wanted a band or something on here, we could come in and assign a material specifically to just these faces. So for those of you where your mesh is it's just all one piece, but you still want to break up that color information, you can do this. But yeah, I would consider adding shaders just to break up the color information, so it's a little more interesting than a flat gray mesh. Yeah, so I'll stop here.